The nation is under siege. The nation is under siege.
Oh, I guess I'm on now. Ugh.
Audrey Telegrain is an absolute pig. On.
Yeah, she is, isn't she? All right, let me get this off of here, folks. Shit. Get back here. All right. That's scary, actually. If I can just get it off of there. No, I don't want that. Oh, that's better. Good evening, everybody. It's Divided We Stand. Sunday, excuse me, Sunday evening on the 16th of June? Yeah, that's 16th of June. We're getting closer to the end of school, at least in my neck of the woods. But that's kind of nice. And we'll be going to our 2 shows a week deal pretty soon, too. So that's really, really good. Geez, I've got some green screen going here. I've got to make sure that's out of there. So anyway, yes, this is Divided We Stand. And if you are unfamiliar to our channel, we are on YouTube and on Facebook. We ask that you subscribe to our channel. We are not monetized, so you don't have to worry about it. We're not trying to get something from you. We just simply would like you to be a part of our group. Yes, and we appreciate when you subscribe to us. And we also would appreciate if you would become a member of our Facebook group. Dave and I have worked very hard at that the last 3 years. It's something that we only plan to do for a short period of time, but look where we are. So please commiserate with us. Well, from Bridgeton, New Jersey, we are going to go via Arlington, Virginia, right near D.C., and that's with our David Price. Dave is a writer, former writer, podcaster, former educator, former journalist, former everything. Man, pretty much an outright lunatic, but he's a good lunatic, so we'll introduce him right now, and that would be Dave Price. How are you?
Brian, did I understand you? We had a 2-minute conversation, that's about all we can fit in before the show. Did you say you were whacking off in the weeds? What did you say? I heard something about
No.
whacking
Yes.
off in the weeds.
I was using my weed whacker to whack all the weeds.
Is that your right hand or your left hand? Your weed?
No, I use my power hand to use that, and that would
be
like this. You know.
Oh,
Now,
you're a two-handed weed whacker.
Yeah, okay. You gonna compliment me? All right. So, but anyway, I have this area. Dave, you kind of know it. I have this little tiny forest behind our house, and we moved here in 2008, and little by little, the entire area was infested with ivy. And as you know, with ivy, it's a bitch to get out of there. You have to, pull the roots. It's a pain in the ass. And I have been working on it, and it looks pretty nice now. But I have to keep this thing going, so I have to get my weed whacker. I've already had to replace different parts of it. It's expensive, but it's well worth it. And I go out there for a couple of hours, and I get things done.
And whack off in the weeds.
Yeah, and I was whacking the weeds off of the property. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I don't know. I just heard those words.
I think your mind's floating in the wrong
Brian,
direction.
question. You moved there in 2008?
Correct.
And we moved out of that neighborhood in 2013. Coincidence? I think not. I think it was your weed whacking that upset your neighbors.
And you sold your house to a Republican. Let me tell you.
Oh yes, absolutely. I would sell my house to Donald Trump if he'd have paid me. I don't care about that.
You left me with her. It was a real Trump. I mean, I believe
he
that.
still is. Oh no, he still is.
Yeah,
he won't talk to me. He gave me his money, and now he won't talk to me, and I'm fine with that.
Well, you should have asked him how he's doing and sent him a Biden
No,
card or something.
we kind of had a shall we say a meeting of the minds, and it didn't go well. So no, he's on his own. But I have to say this: he paid cash for the house at the exact asking price we had. So I'll give him a pass on his honesty, but I'll give him a not a pass on his political acumen.
Right.
Speaking of which,
I didn't know you knew that he was a Trumper, though. Honestly.
oh yeah, no. It was clear when he purchased it. We talked about it. I mean, I knew the family.
He was conservative. Okay, but I can see it on these
he was
stickers on his car, truck.
right. There's no. Let's put it like this. From what conversations we did have, and he's typical of many Trumpers. He could talk about other things, and of course, Donald Trump wasn't in the race yet. But I knew the moment that Donald Trump entered that would be the person who bought my house.
By the way, let me ask you this, Dave. I mean,
Sure.
Look, you're pretty well known around these parts. You were kind of like the big fish, small pond kind of thing. Like
I guess. I think that's kind of fair.
Yeah, it's kind of fair. I'm not to say that you haven't expanded beyond this realm.
No. But I would agree.
But you obviously had a lot of acquaintances, friends, whatever. Now that, of course, we've run into this divided we stand situation. Did you contemplate at the time just how many people you knew who were conservative, and then you would not be friends with them again?
No. Some, obviously some were more shocking than others. I could name names. I'm not averse to doing
No,
that.
that's not necessary.
No. What I meant, it wouldn't mean anything to our viewers. So
Right.
I'm going to describe more positions. A couple politicians whom I respected. They were Republicans. I say I could like them. I mean, we weren't best friends, but and they surprised me that they went immediately. One got back to me and said, "Everybody fucking told me that you were a fucking asshole, and I didn't believe it. But you really are a fucking asshole." I thought that was a nice.
No, was he saying it as a joke, or was he really?
No, he was serious. He would say, "I'll never speak to you again."
And it was because of your politics.
Correct.
Okay.
Another, my favorite, is that I was fired by our accountant, who was one of the first. And not only did our accountant join the Trump visit, but she was in QAnon. I mean, she just went way out there. And then, I believed at the time when I left Bridgeton in 2013 that you could reason with people, sort of, and with politics. And there were. I mean, Brian, I covered politics, from the 70s and the 80s. And there weren't a whole lot of significant differences a lot of times. Like sometimes the Democrats were more conservative than the Republicans running locally. It was a local race. Another politician who I truly, truly admired as a person, as a father, I was stunned. And it has cost him. His son, was a Republican and is no longer. Now they don't
JC,
argue.
we're talking JC.
Yeah, and they don't argue at all. I mean, they love one another and all that. As far as my students, I only had I had a few that dropped me. I would not drop a student. I didn't care. And then but I did drop one who threatened my grandchildren and my son, and said that everybody knew that I was having affairs with students when I was there.
Oh, nice, real nice.
Yeah, and I don't care. They're lies. I mean, it doesn't
Right.
But I just told him, and I said, "You are dead to me," and just ended it that way. I still kept a few. One, I laugh. We only have one biological son, but over the years, I picked up 6 others. 5 of them from Bridgeton High School at different times, and one of them is a Trumper, and I keep him. I mean, he's funny. I mean, he's again, and I think now I can't prove this, but he and his father had a very rocky relationship when they were young. I mean, really bad. And then as he got older and out of high school, they kind of reconnected. And I think maybe he became conservative because his father was extremely conservative. And but I mean, he definitely drank the Kool-Aid and went that way. One of my friends, and actually she's a better friend to my wife Judy, but we've known her since 9th grade. I keep her around because she was insane before. She's just insane now. But it shocked Judy the first time we came back right after Trump, and we pulled up to the business she was running at the time. And on her truck, she had all the Trump stickers. So, as you know, and Brian, you live there, I live there, it's an extremely conservative farm area, if you will, or suburban area surrounded by an extremely democratic city. Or, I mean, the city is surrounded. From and now, though, I mean, it's true. When I left in 2013, the 7 freeholders, head of county government, were all Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Today, they are all Republicans. So that's how much has switched. You've spoken before about the House of Representatives member we had, Jeff Van Drew, who switched his party allegiance and has become a big time Trump ring and ass kisser.
Right.
But I think the thing that we have to keep in mind, maybe that where we lived, where I lived and you live now, is not really typical necessarily of New Jersey, because New Jersey is heavily Democratic as you move up. But the other thing is, it is heavily Southern. And the reason that is true is before World War II and after World War II, around that period of time, Bridgeton had, it's open to some debate. Some say the largest glass manufacturing plant in the world. Some say it was third, but it was big, okay? And it actually took care of the town and ran the town, but they would not hire black people. So they actually put ads in Kentucky, Tennessee, but heavily in West Virginia. Because,
right,
again,
because a lot of West Virginians came up.
And it's not speculation. I mean, you can find the ads. I've researched them and written about them. And so suddenly, growing up, it was like it really is a great Southern influence. So that's not surprising necessarily that it would be Trump people. I know you and I have talked about, as you move down toward the Delaware Bay, it gets more Trumpian.
Right.
That is really Trump country. But so is the offshore areas in Cape May. There's a lot of Republican, Donald Trump. And of course, what's interesting, Brian, to me, and it'll take 100 years probably to sort this thing out if we're still around in 100 years, not you and I, but anyone, to figure out, how, I mean, books are already coming out about how did we get here and what happened. And we can't figure it out right now because we're in the middle of it. So,
Right.
I mean, I can speculate, okay, why person X, went to Trump, or person Y went to Trump. And I still have maybe 2 really good friends who, somehow we've maintained just, well, one of them, it's interesting, we went battled all the time. And he was one of the first, he was an ultimate Trumper. And we just kind of said, well, we'll stay this way, and and just agree that we don't hate one another. But he thinks I'm crazy, and I think he's crazy.
Right.
And the other thing that I've done, just because there are, as a writer, there are different styles of writing. Well, that's the same in social media too. So I do not put any political posts. As you remember, I put like 10 a day at one point.
Right.
I do not post anything political on my
You and I
Facebook
both
page.
were. I mean, if you go back to 15, you and I both were posting our political statements
Oh, yeah.
on our personal pages, and you and I both had. Now, you obviously have a lot more friends than I do on Facebook.
Right.
I'm not saying you have one of these tons of friends like Joey. You got like 4,500. Joey knows everybody. But and by the way, Joey, I give. Let me just divert. Joey, I give a lot of credit. Joey, and Joey, I hope you're out there. Joey's got some balls. He will still post the political stuff
no question.
on his personal page. He does not bullshit. He just lays it out there with people. They don't like. He's got 4,500 people that follow him.
Well, what I have noticed about Joey, and I agree with your assessment, and I don't know him as well as you do, but I know him pretty well. I think Joey posts what he believes, but he doesn't argue with people, right? I mean,
Right. That's his way. Right.
And that's his way, and that's a pretty good way. Now, I'm not saying anybody should ever do what I do. I always feel with my life, it's like Keith Richard said about his life. I can, I can. He didn't say this, but he could have said, "I can snort my dad's ashes." He was accused
Right.
of doing that, and still be me. But I wouldn't advise you to be me, and I think that's good advice for all of us. But I just decided that, in deference to people's feelings, that I decided personal Facebook page is not the page to do it. Now, I did take my Twitter.
And by the way, but at that time, group pages were not a big thing. This was something that you and I had discussed, and we
Absolutely.
needed a haven, a place to go.
And I would not be averse to discussing with anyone in any format my political beliefs. But like I said, I just changed Facebook. Other people may not have, and that's fine. But as you just pointed out, Brian, we have another option. And so what I did is I used this page. I've got another 3 others lining up, all of which will be extremely liberal, but 2 will be involved, kind of not in the same way, but I'll fill people in more on that as it develops. But also the idea, I said, okay, well, and I was never, I used Twitter. It's since Elon Musk took over, it's a piece of shit. It was before bad, but so what I did is I changed that, and now that's anti-Trump, anti-GOP all the time. But I really don't put any of my own beliefs in there. I just grab other people's, and put it out there for discussion, because I would urge everybody hearing my voice or say don't follow me, and then I ask you to follow me. I think it's good to check in from time to time. With that kinds of fees, and they're unbelievable. You get some outlandish remarks, you get some very personal attacks on people. Then you get these continuing ads. By the way, here's a revelation. Anytime you see, and I'm sure you've seen them, Brian, somebody famous with the Nope shirt. Have you seen that? Which just stands for Nope.
Taylor Swift had one.
Because no, she doesn't.
I understand that. It's got to be phony. It's got to be funny.
None of those are
phony.
Real. None of those are real. Now, there are people who support Biden, and there are famous actors or actresses, 4 of them maybe, who support Trump. But it's interesting that you bring this up. Our reaction to people. I never watched much TV when ever. I just wasn't. It wasn't something. I think.
I watched The Wire. I know that.
Well, no. Well, I was actually thinking about what I actually watched, right? And I think there were only 4 shows, or 5, maybe 5, I guess, in no particular order, in my adult years. Let's see, would have been Twin Peaks. David Lynch is a genius as far as I'm concerned. I've seen everything he's ever done. The Wire, which you mentioned, which I consider to be the greatest 5 season series in history. The Sopranos. Lost, and Miami Vice. Really, that's in right. 30 years. But now, we have some more time, and especially during my recovery period from the triple bypass, Judy and I started watching more TV. The thing is, we have to agree on it, and that's hard. We have very differing tastes. But one we picked up on is 24 with Kiefer Sutherland. And I like it because it's political, and that interests me. Again, you have to suspend belief. It's not reality. But my point I'm saying here is John Voight, who I've admired since. I'll address that anti-guy in a moment. Who I have admired in certain ways, or thought he's a good actor ever since Midnight Cowboy. Right,
which is ironic the way he is politically, and yet the role he played with Midnight Cowboy is just
he wasn't that way. He something happened to him, and he plays a major role in the next to last. We're on the next to last season of
because let's just say right out front that he was just fabulous in that film.
There's no question. He's done other things, but now I have a hard time, not going, or this to him on the screen just because I know his political beliefs. Another actor who I really admired for some of his acting work, and still do. You could separate the two, but it does taint it, is James Woods.
Yeah,
It's
I
really
actually
good.
was playing video poker next to him early in the morning at the Borgata about 8 in the morning one
Yeah,
time. I said to
and
Ron,
he's
"That's James Woods." I didn't say anything to him. I
yeah.
don't care.
No, but the idea of it is, I mean, he is also,
Oh, very
and there's a
conservative.
few, there, but again, there's nothing wrong, Brian. Let's face it. There's nothing wrong with being conservative. I would argue with you. I don't think it's good. But what is not good and not acceptable and should not be tolerated is claiming you're conservative and backing Donald Trump.
Right.
It's like claiming you're religious and backing Donald Trump.
It's
Um,
like claiming you're religious and yet you want to be the first in line to get the vaccine. You know.
and well, of course that's the power brokers, but the general people don't.
Right.
I'm amazed the number of people, well, a couple of them I've talked to even, who lost a family member in COVID and still does not believe that it was
Right.
real or this or it was that. Um, now
It's
let's get back.
seemingly after the fact with a lot of them. It seems that I don't know that they had that idea. I think a lot of it was the Republican propaganda that
Oh
came out,
well, no
and mainly from
question.
Trump,
Well, yes,
because it hurt
certainly,
Trump. It hurt
certainly.
Trump. COVID
Well,
hurt Trump.
well, his stupidity hurt about COVID
Well,
hurt Trump.
absolutely. He's
I mean,
responsible
but you're
for a
right.
million deaths.
Well, he doesn't see it, and of course, these people don't see it. But it really is. I mean, look, anybody who says it's not a cult is wrong. Uh, we were talking about a group of us here in D.C. At a very liberal place called Busboys and Poets, which is very cool. I highly recommend you go there if you come to D.C. And it's just a place where pretty much liberals hang out, and it's kind of what it says. It's named after Langston Hughes, who spent a lot of time in D.C. and he was both a busboy and a poet. But anyway, and somebody asked a really good question. I just don't understand, and we were all trying. All of us kind of said we don't understand either how you get to be a Trumper. But the consensus by the time we were done, after 15 minutes or so discussion, in no particular order: power, hatred, fear of change, the idea of one up. So in other words, if you really think that having nobody attack your guns is what you want, you certainly Trump is not going to attack your guns, right? Same thing with abortion. Now it's interesting. He's kind of, if you've been following him, he's kind of um, softened his position on abortion a little bit. But so have Republicans, because they're saying that's just a non-winnable issue.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
they not with voters they need, which would be women, suburban voters, and that's just not going to
Right. But
fly.
how they play that game, it's so insidious that they'll basically say anything at any time, anywhere, depending
Well,
on where they are and when they are there. And
that's
it's
true.
and the frightening part, Dave, is that seems to be effective with an impressionable Trump base, or even let's just not even call it Trump
Well,
base, Americans, some
well,
uneducated
think
Americans.
about it. But think about it. If your news sources were limited to Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, but um, you you'd have a skewered view. It's flat out insane. All right, that they're allowed to call themselves a news organization. But of course, you can call yourself whatever you want. I can say I'm emperor of the universe if I want to, right?
Right.
But that's so. I mean, as you get fed that Kool-Aid, the other thing is, and this always surprises me, and I'm not that smart. I'm really not. I suppose I'm well read. I guess you could say that in certain areas, not in all areas. Like I'm abysmally ignorant in science, but
Right, but you're smart enough to be confused. You can actually
oh
understand.
oh no,
That
no.
look,
I mean
there's two
that's
things going on. That's what
no,
we are. We do our
but
best.
I'm amazed at how politically ignorant, and I'm defining ignorance as unaware, not as deliberately. It's not stupidity. Is to me is you deliberately don't know something and say you do, or you deliberately uh, know something and deny it, and that kind of thing. So ignorance is just um, unaware of. How many people are unaware of just certain precepts in government and the way it runs that dangerously so. Um, And I had a shock, Brian. I got to admit, it was a shock. We said we have 7 sons, only one was biological, and but we also adopted, if you will, a young lady here in D.C. Who is actually from Egypt and living here now. And we hadn't gotten together for a while, and she wanted to come over, and she did. And we were talking, and she is. I mean, she hates Donald Trump. But as we got into political discussion, she didn't know anything that was going on, right? I mean, it was just. I mean, that whenever I see that, I'm more amazed at the people that don't know what's going on than the people that have a misunderstanding of what's going on. I don't see. Again, they don't have to do it like I do. I mean, I pretty much live, breathe, and die things that are political or related, related to it. But let's get to some politics. I think it's interesting, kind of a good segue in about the lives. But before we do that, let me answer. Could you put that guy's thing up there again about Walter Mosley?
Okay, quite a few. Was it this?
If you can find. No, it was about Walter Mosley. It was the first one he put up.
Sure.
Did I go see Walter?
There you go.
Oh no. Well, if you could see this thing behind me, that's kind of I'm not one to like have pictures, but some people, it was just kind of nice. You meet down here. And so I got to spend time with Walter Mosley, who is a phenomenal writer. And one that we don't see much, a black mystery writer. Anyway, yes, I had it to go, and then something came up and I couldn't. So I have been to 2 of his talks over the 13 years we've been here, but I didn't go to this one. And I really wanted to, because the book sounds kind of cool. It's about, he writes about black community in LA. And it's fiction, but he also is a science fiction writer of some things which you don't find much in black culture. And he's a very good speaker. Along those same lines, it was interesting this week. I went to I was talking about busboys and poets, and all of their speakers are way to the left, which is kind of cool, right? That's kind of where they are. Like the Heritage would never let any of these people in, and that includes authors and poets, and very supportive of the gay, the black, the Hispanic communities. But anyway, they had a professor there, Laura Beers, who's a professor at American University, and she had 2 books out before, but nobody would read them. They were textbook kind of things. You know what I mean? They were like doctoral dissertation types. But she has a book out now. I've got an order from the library. I told her, I said, I didn't have enough money, Laura. I didn't buy your book. It's called Orwell's Ghost. And what it is, it's a look at how Orwell foresaw using the fascism of the 30s to kind of say we're here. And it was really, I mean, she's smart, she's good. And I don't like to dominate questions, but I'm usually prepared with something, after I hear something. So nobody was asking a question at first, so I usually will jump in. So I asked her, I said, well, we got all these dystopian novels. We've got 1984, which obviously, Laura, you're an expert in. We've got Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. We've got Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. And, one of the big ones that came late to the game, but is, Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. And you could throw in the Hunger Games.
And that is unbelievable to me, because it's running parallel to what's going on in my head.
Well, that's what we were. So I said, let's play a game. All of us here, there are about 30 of us. I said, let's rate them. In order of how they speak to us now. And
plot to whatever, something America.
Yes, plot. Yes, and plot. America, Philip Roth. But we just took those 4 because those 4 are like there's more. Of course, there's more. And which one do you think almost universally? We just had fun. We disagreed on which would be one. Basically, came down to you had to choose between 1984 and
Brave New World.
No, 1984 and Handmaid's Tale for the theocracy and the fascism. And then somebody would say, but what about the book burning is there? It is. I mean, we're not literally burning. Well, they are.
Right.
Almost. So, of course, there was some. So which one do you think finished last?
I mean, are you just comparing those 2?
4. No, 4. The 4 that I said.
So, again, let's just repeat the 4. You're talking about 1984, Handmaid's Tale.
Correct.
Not Brave New World.
Yes, Brave New
Yeah,
World.
Brave New World. And it was the last one.
Fahrenheit 451.
Fahrenheit 451.
And it was
Which would come in
almost
last.
universal.
Would come in
Come in
last.
Yeah, there were different scattered votes for the others all over the place.
Well,
But
you
this
know, when I
one-
think of 1984, I think because it was based off of Zamyatin's "We," in Russian it's "Мы," and it patterned after what was going on in totalitarian Russia.
Mhm.
So I know you're not going to like this, but I would think that to me, 1984 would go last.
You would have not fit. No, there was not a person there. To a person, we all agreed, least right now is Brave New World. But you had to put a proviso on that. Brave New World came before this to set up where we are now. Because, Brave New World was the drugs, right? Brave New World was entertainment, and I'm a firm believer that if Donald Trump had not had the show The Apprentice, he would not be president today.
Right, I agree with you.
And people say, well, no, The Apprentice got him, had The Apprentice opened a door when he slithered down.
Because he's on every week.
Right.
He's out there. He's now penetrating real estate in your brain. Absolutely.
Now, what is interesting, if you talk to people in New York or New Jersey, the two states that he was most affected by, you don't find many Donald Trump supporters.
No, that's the ironic thing.
You also find a lot of Donald Trump haters that go back all the way to the 70s.
And to think that the Southerners would vote for someone like a Northerner, that to me is...
But I think, again, they feel he's more Southern because he acts like he hates the same people that they hate.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
He acts. I don't think there's a less Christian-like person walking the planet today. And I'll throw axe murderers and serial killers in there. Donald Trump is the antithesis of a Christian. But,
yet they see him as a modern day Jesus, for what it's worth.
Well, there's something I'm posting coming up and writing about. There's a book, so I don't want to give it away, but it'll speak just to that. So anyway, that was just interesting. And asking Laura, she went kind of point by point about it is coming true. And of course, the big thing is we haven't even seen it yet, but Trump will get able to see it. It's not just the stamping. What was it that in 1984? You want an image of the world? It's a boot smashing someone in the face forever kind of thing. Authoritarian totalitarianism. But of course, the big thing is Big Brother is watching you. And there's now the capability. Anybody who has any technology in their home, there's a good chance that you're being listened.
Well, that's certainly in the case of Russia.
Well,
Okay.
It's here too, though, Brian.
Well,
Look,
it's here, but it's in a certain way that it's not. It's just so much of it that it I don't want to say it waters it down, but it doesn't have that same parallel to the novel.
It's not being used right now, but it's there. Actually, they could do a better job. Okay, I'll give you an example. Very fortunate. I always wanted to go to Cuba, and I got to go, and I spent 10 days there. And after a couple of days, I was talking to some Cuban people. I said, "Listen, where are all these gendarmes? Where are all these guards?
Right.
You didn't see them. You didn't see them at all." And they said, "Oh no, we don't need them. Each block has 2 or 3 citizens who report everything that goes on." So I mean, they don't need the security there. They have it. I mean, they have eyes and ears that report. Here, what we have so far, but this is where you have to be very careful when we get a Donald Trump character in the White House. Do you have Alexa or Google Assistant?
No, I do. I just use whatever. I mean
Siri,
but even then I hardly use it.
but you have it.
I hear she apparently just said hello to you.
You can say
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I have.
There it is. Siri just said
Yeah,
hello to me
right.
by mentioning her name. It's amazing. For example,
I
and how.
didn't get that. Could you try again?
No, Siri, I'll let you go now. But the idea is, let me think. Okay, so
That's great.
we have we're kind of a modern family. We have, if you take our phones and our iPads and our laptops and our We have more computers by far than we have people in our home. But but Judy has a computer that dedicated to her. It is a Mac, and but she'll look up something, and I'll get it immediately on my Facebook page of the same thing. Like she'll be looking for trips to Europe. So I mean, it's almost instantaneous how quickly that stuff can go, and it has pretty much Siri can hear you, right? You don't. It's on 24/7, Brian.
Yeah.
And so all it would need.
Is it kind of like God, so to speak, listening to you?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's something
vicariously, right?
And we haven't, and we're just in the infancy with AI, which is not really AI yet, but it's headed that way. And can you imagine? I mean, this should horrify people. Donald Trump being the president when AI is on the march. Terminator, here we come.
Right.
But anyway, I think this week there was an incident later, a couple days ago, that captured two things, maybe the best they've been captured in this election cycle so far. And it takes place in Detroit. And Trump is trying to push the idea that he has a lot growing black support. I don't think it's true. If it is, it's a percentage point. I mean, but anyway, so he goes out there and he's going to have a rally at a black church. Did you see about that at all? Did you?
The only thing that I saw, there were some posts of photographs on Twitter where black church, and I didn't see one black person in the pews.
Well, here's what happens. Okay, so the headline was an AP headline. Now, again, I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence, but a lot of people don't know what that is. AP stands for Associated Press. There used to be two. One was UPI, United Press International, and Associated Press. They were two different webs, but they don't write for any particular geographic area. They write for the world, and you subscribe to them. Back when I was working as a reporter, we got both. Some had one, some had the other. But you got that because you can't be all over the world covering. You can't even be all over the country covering. Right. You can't even be all over the state that you live in covering. So they would do that, and they would get reporters who would also be stringers. Like I was a stringer for UPI. I didn't. They paid me per story, and they'd say, look, something's happening over here in Delaware, and we want you to go. And if it didn't conflict with what I was doing, I could do that.
So it's sort of like a subcontracted.
Yeah, but they had their own reporters too. I mean, but the idea was they were like supposedly the most reputable because they played it right down the middle, right? Because they didn't want to offend really anybody. Now there is a danger to that if you weren't using local reporters because you wouldn't know the inside. You wouldn't know who the players are, who the good guys and bad guys. But still, it was reputable. And they're still there, and they're joined by a couple others. Reuters, which was a British concern, is over here now. A friend of mine, really good friend. I actually trained him to come on. He works for Reuters now. So AP, the story went out, and basically it presented such a thing that Trump went to this black church to speak to black people, to point out how crime-ridden their city is, Detroit, and say, that's what the Democrats give you. And Joe Biden doesn't care about, that kind of thing, right? And I'll come in and I'll help you. Yeah, right, okay. But anyway, none of that was true, okay? So here's some things that have come out since AP ran this story. Number one, Kellyanne Conway, another one of your sexual fantasy girls, said on Fox News that there were 8,000 people in this church. Now, I saw a video of the entire church. It wouldn't even hold 1,000, let alone 8,000. And there were no more. If there were 200 people there, that was a lot. So that's just an out lie. But again, it's on Fox News. Again, it's believed by those who believe Fox News, right? With no check. But it's not Fox News doing that. AP put the story out, okay? So we got to remember that that's there. Now, One reporter said he spoke to 8 black people. That means he spoke to just about everybody who was there that was black. And he said 1 was from the church and 7 had no affiliations with the church. So where did they come from? I don't know. But say there were 200 people there. 8 black people does not constitute
Well,
a black church.
my suspicion is they could play games. Like, for example, with my DNA report, I have 0.2%.
Oh, no. They
They
couldn't. No, that doesn't fly here, Brian. I know what you're saying. But no,
Mm.
this was simply what happened was they scheduled this without really thinking about it, and there was nobody coming. So they sent out an emergency call to the whatever the fascist Trump organization is in Detroit, and these white people showed up as Trump supporters. Now, there's also been proof, and this is not an allegation, but we don't know in this case. A lot of times, they put ads on Craigslist and others asking to pay sometimes for people to come. So I don't know if any of them were paid or they just came, whatever. But obviously, they were white. Now, Trump speaks, of course, at length of this crime crisis in Detroit. But here's the actual fact, Brian. Here's the actual fact. Murder is down to the lowest rate of homicides Detroit has had in 57 years.
I believe it.
The lowest murder rate in 57 years, yet crime is escalating according to Donald Trump. Now, AP runs this story. And remember, AP goes out to almost every paper in America, every news organization in America, every news radio station in America, and very few of them. The only people who had maybe the Times, maybe the Post could have had somebody there. Detroit Free Press, a couple of Detroit, but nobody else. So you rely on the AP story, and it wasn't until the 3rd paragraph of that story where it mentioned that the crowd was predominantly not black. Now, a good reporter, you know what they would have done? They would have counted the number of people there. Forget Trump talking. Count the number of people there and say, I witnessed, 8 black people and 196 white people, or whatever. You had time to do that. I would have done it, Then the second, which is even worse, it was all the way down to the 17th paragraph where they made any mention about the fact that there weren't members of the church there.
Well, let me ask you this, Dave, because that brings to the point when I noticed that, for example, you get teased on the phone when you look at the news, especially on Yahoo News, and they'll say, this person said this, Travis Kelce said that, or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But you got to keep scrolling until you finally get to the point. Like they had this long introduction, paragraph after paragraph. And then you say, what the hell? I don't feel like doing this anymore. So
no, well,
it's very sneaky.
What they want to do, it's very simple. But it's more blatant now because it's easier to do. Unfortunately, news has always been about a 5-letter word, M-O-N-E-Y. Cut it any way you want. Newspapers, I worked for them for more than a decade and have followed them almost all my life. Worked at the museum, Museum of News, and did research there. What happens is now they talk about clickbait.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you're attracted to go for it. That news organizations don't use that so much. That's really disreputable stuff. But what they use is disguise to keep you in. Like they'll say something like you just said, but it'll be 5 or 6 or 7 paragraphs before you know. Really,
it's so frustrating that I have to keep looking for it. I want the meat of it, and boom, that's it.
And that used to be. See, what the cardinal rule of journalism, as we learned it back in the 70s and into the 80s, was 6 questions had to be answered.
Who, what, when, where, why?
Who, what, where, when, why, and how. Now, 2 of those were always difficult to answer for the most part, the how and the why. Why are you scratching your face right now? Well, that can go on forever. Just think about it. Well, okay, I'll ask you. Why were you just scratching your face?
I don't know. I was just feeling my face, and I just thought maybe I realized that I didn't shave well over here, and I feel
okay. Then why didn't you shave well?
Because I bought this shaver that sucks. It looks good, but
Okay,
I can go like this forever and ever, and it's got like 15 hairs,
so
and it can't
so why
get
why
rid of.
haven't you bought a new
I'll tell
razor?
you why. Because I just bought it less than a year ago, and I feel like it's my obligation to just use it.
Do you understand how long we could go with this?
Right.
You could go forever. That's part of the difficulty with the why. And a lot of times, you and I have debated this ad infinitum for years: determinism, fate, free will, what's there, God, all that kind of stuff. But the point is, you were still, as a reporter, supposed to answer it. Now it's hold off, and there's even some taglines. There's a Democratic, what is it? Something I don't even remember, who posts a lot of shit on something Democratic, something in on Twitter, or well, formerly known as Twitter X, and they always say on the second line, they'll say something like, "Donald Trump's penis has fallen off," right? But it gets even worse. It's always, but it gets even worse, and then you have to click on it to jump. And it's
Right.
not, that's the idea. Now, the Washington Post, I've praised it when it needed it. It was instrumental in bringing down Richard Nixon, no question about it. It's one of the finest moments. It is still a first-rate newspaper, but like everything else, they've had to change. You know how in the stock market, they have that, what do they call, ticker going around up top, and you can see, well, they have one in the newsroom with stories, and you're looking at it as a reporter. And if you see suddenly you've gotten 4 hits and somebody else has gotten 6,000 hits, you begin to get shaking your boots a little bit. So there's ways, and it's when I say slant, it's not what we do, but you slant your story in such a way, not to tell untruths, but to try to get more people into it, not lies and stuff. It's they don't make it up. Like people say, they really don't. But what they don't know, Brian, they don't know how to cover Donald Trump. They don't. Look, you can search every president every day for the rest of your life, and you won't find anybody even close to Donald Trump. 84,000 lies in his 4 years as president. Well, I can't remember. I think it was like 18 a day or something like that, or more. I forget. Well, how do you cover someone like that? I don't think you cover it the way it used to be. Well, he said, then Biden said, then he said, he said, she said, kind of journalism. That doesn't work. But I'm really disappointed in AP, and I'm also disappointed in the Washington Post. Or not. Let me rephrase that. I don't know enough to be disappointed. I'm concerned. Now, this sounds like an insider story for newspapers, but it's more than that. I want to come back. To that anti-guy in a moment. Yeah, anti-guy is great. He gives me all this stuff to talk about. It's really good. But with the Post, they just hired a new overseer, managing executive editor, and his work was done in London on Fleet Street. And British papers are much different. Okay, they pay sources, they pay for stories.
Right.
I mean, we
Like
look
the
at that
Telegraph and the Guardian.
in horror. There's all anyway. So and he got caught in some pretty unscrupulous stuff, but he was hired by the board at the Post to take over the position, and he fired immediately the highest ranking woman on the Post, and had already brought in one, and is bringing another one of his buddies. So now 3 of the 4 ranking people are going to be British trained. And you know who the ultimate British journalist is, right? Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch, they follow his,
Well, isn't
format.
he Australian?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, but Britain follows his format. Like, for example, British papers, their tabloids are more, are more well read than their legitimate papers, and they're trashy. They're they're
I never
salacious.
understood why that, especially in England. It's just like a multi-tiered society, and
Well, it is, but
why
they
that
hide.
thing would
They
do
hide
well.
behind. They hide. Everybody says, everybody says, oh, he must be smart. He talks British. Or he must be dumb. He talks Southern. There's crazy things we do. But right now, my point is, the press. I still know a few people there. are really worried and up in arms that they're going to become, this really good paper. It's a writer's paper. New York Times is a editor's paper, but they're really concerned. So, hopefully it'll survive this and it'll still be able to do good journalism. Now, Maggie Halberstam's an interesting character. She is recognized as one of the best print reporters out there, has been for years, but even she got damaged a little bit in the Trump trial when Michael Cohen intimated, and so I shouldn't intimate, said that, well, he didn't really say, it kind of indicated, I guess would be the proper word, that Maggie was someone he would contact to plant stories about Trump. And now some people have gone back to look at what she's written. Now she has a book on Donald Trump that is like, it's like this thick, right? And she is a good reporter, don't get me wrong. But, now it raises some questions of, did she let herself be used by Michael Cohen as a conduit to get inside information on Trump, which is very common. And as a reporter, you face that all the time. It's kind of that you can't get too close, but you got to get close enough to get the stories that the other reporters won't get. Again, 24 is kind of real life to an extreme in politics, and in the storyline now. It's actually the daughter of the president's first female president. She actually has a newsman who she'd had some feelings for before, actually coerces her and blackmails her into bed to get information. A lot of times it's the other way. But my point is, all of this kind of pales to the comparison. Nobody knows how to cover Trump. Nobody. I mean, what do you do, Brian? I mean, do you put?
I just read Ronan Farrow or something like that. I just can't.
Well, no. What I meant was, do you say Donald Trump says crime, rampant crime? However, the facts are, and I think we're at that point. We need to do that. Now, there are people who argue it doesn't matter, and it doesn't as far as his supporters are concerned.
There has to be some pushback, either way. But if he's lying his ass off, you still have to do it, whether it matters or not.
But do you see?
It does matter.
But do you see the difficulty is if you're a political reporter, obviously the ultimate job is White House. I mean that's the top of the heap.
White House reporter, right?
Yeah, and
so Sam Donaldson, that was like his thing.
But you kind of you have to sometimes sacrifice some of your conscience and other things to get there. And when you have someone as morally bankrupt as Trump, it gets really dangerous, to do that. So I would hope, I should say would have hoped that, okay, when he came down that golden escalator at Trump, whatever the fuck his name is in New York, Trump's place, he comes down that thing. And I understand nobody knew how to cover him. I saw him in Atlanta. I know what I would have done. I mentioned it before in the show. Nobody did it, probably because they wanted to keep their job. But when he started attacking the press there, I would have just stood up and said, Mr. President, you're a liar. Now, that'd probably been the end of my career. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying I would do that. I wasn't
the beginning of a new one.
Well, or something, right. And Mr. Donaldson, actually, we have somewhat to blame for some of the drops in journalism, because Sam was a great newsman, but he was one of the first to emphasize personality. Remember, he used to stand up and suddenly everybody wanted to be Sam Donaldson. Well, it's like every writer, when I started the business, wanted to be either Hunter Thompson or Mike Royko or Jimmy Breslin or Tom Wolfe. There's one Tom Wolfe, there's one Jimmy Breslin. You can't be that. So, and they wanted to be Sam Donaldson or Mike Wallace. And we don't have those now. And talking to somebody else
or can you, with there's so much media out there, so many different platforms. I don't know how somebody breaks ahead.
That's the other thing. I mean, and it's funny. Where do you get your news? I get it from YouTube. No, you don't. Where do you get your news? I get it from Facebook. No, you don't. Where do you get your news? I get it on X. No, you don't. Because all written communicate, X and Facebook, and none of those have writers. They're getting it from somewhere else, right? So it's like, and then you have completely like Breitbart, and I haven't heard much about them recently. That was Bannon's baby,
right?
And of course, what's he have till July 1st, right?
July
Clock's
1st,
ticking, clock's ticking,
2
Stevie boy.
weeks.
And I think somebody made, and it has really brought us down in the muck and mire, but you got to fight where they are, and they're in the muck and mire. Somebody said, you know why Bannon, the question was, do you know why Steve Bannon's so afraid to go to jail? He said, they might make him take a shower. Now, he just looks disheveled, right?
He
And
does.
that's his choice. That's his choice. I mean, I'm sure he showers, but it's just that way. So I would, urge everyone, just as an example, to go back, read a couple stories about this black church that Trump was at. Another thing I wanted to address tonight, if I may, for a moment, is there's still fallout coming from Trump's trial. We've talked a lot about, we know that we're waiting for the July 11th sentencing, but some of the news is good and some of the news is disturbing. You get to pick. You want the disturbing stuff first, or you want the good stuff first? What do you want, Brian?
I'm always somebody who's negative, but I'm going to go with the optimist. Let's get the good stuff first.
Okay, I think what was good this week, there is a very good chance that Trump will have his 3 liquor license that he has for his 3 golf courses in New Jersey stripped from him, because the law is very clear. A convicted felon cannot have liquor license.
Oh, wow. If they don't
in
have
New
a
Jersey.
liquor license at a golf course, oh, my God, they'll lose all their members.
Well, what would happen, of course?
Bring
is
your
simply-
own beer? Jesus Christ.
Simply what would happen is he can't have the liquor license. So he would give it to
Transfer
Eric.
to somebody else, right?
But the idea is it would hurt him because, in his mind, he is the Trump organization.
Right.
So that's kind of good news. The other thing is, we talked about it last week. As a convicted felon, he can't have guns. And here's something that's really fast. He says, I always carry a gun. Do you really think the Secret Service lets the president carry a gun? I don't think so. I don't think so.
He's lying.
Now, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, he might have done it in private life. Okay, but unfortunately, Brian, the negatives far outweigh the positives.
All right, here we go. I'm bracing myself.
So, as a convicted felon, you must report to the probation office for initial hearing. That is the rule. First of all, you're supposed to do it before you leave the courthouse.
And he didn't do it, correct?
He did not do it. But what he did, he has had it now, but there were 3 glaring differences than you would have with a normal defendant. First of all, he was allowed to do it from home on Zoom. I would be interested to know if there's ever been another defendant in the United States of America who was convicted, who ever was allowed that opportunity. There might be. I mean, I don't know, but it's not something, it allows for comfortability. I mean, think about it. If you're in front in the court, or in the federal or state facilities, that's their grounds. They should have you there, right, to question you. Not you shouldn't have home field, and so he's able to do that. Secondly, and again, I'd love to know how many people. I don't think it's very, very rare if it's done at all. He was allowed to have an attorney with him.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, it's just you and the probation officer or officers, and they're questioning you, and you're answering the questions. And then the third, to me, is the most disturbing of all. It is almost always normal to get a baseline. You ask for a P specimen, because as a convicted felon, you can be asked to give a urine sample at any time, and they want a base, right, to see. Now, why do I want him to do that? Well, first of all, I want him to do it because it's kind of humiliating. But secondly, I'm actually, maybe I'm the only person in America concerned. I want to know, is it mental illness, encroaching dementia, or drugs that causing him to have the mental breakdown he's having? I just want to know. I mean, if you can. And so
or the accumulation of many factors.
Well, but what I'm saying is, if he didn't have drugs in his system, doesn't mean he doesn't do. But that would be one step toward, okay, he's got dementia, or he's just completely friggin' insane. So again, and that leads credence to Trump is being treated differently than others, and that leads credence to saying, well, see, that's a lie. All men aren't or all people aren't equal under the law, and we know that's. I mean, look, money gets you legal service that if you don't have the money, you can't get.
And as
If
we
nothing-
found out, the law isn't even the law these days. The way things
well,
are going. With the Supreme Court.
I think what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court is so out of control, Brian, that I'm going to suggest we'll probably be doing it next week. We'll just do a whole.
This is where I did want to mention. I know we've discussed this before, but you know, Ronnie and I were having a discussion today about. She wanted to know what I thought was going to happen. I think I said this last time. Is that because I've seen what has happened to Trump with the popular vote, he's definitely going to lose the popular vote. It is going to come down to a few states, and I think he's going to win by a few thousand votes. And that's where the problem's going, because first of all, he's not going to admit to losing. And then you have the governors there, playing this game, and that we're going to be on the brink of a civil war because somehow it's going to go to the courts, just like in 2000, and there's going to be a dirty deal, and that's where the dirty deal is going to be, and then Biden has to make decisions. So I don't think Biden needs to be like Al Gore in 2000. I think this time, I said to Ronnie, I said I would think that the Democratic Party is. Entrenching itself in these swing states, and they got to be prepared, because I'm telling you, the worst time is not going to be the election. It's going to be after the election. We're going to be on here. This is exactly what we're going to be talking about. It's going to be the worst thing ever.
I'm gonna take you a scenario that may or may not happen. I agree with everything you said.
Thank you.
I'm gonna add another scenario to it that concerns me even more. Let's take a state like Michigan. Okay, Michigan is going to be is an up for grabs state.
Yes.
And it will be the cities. If Joe Biden wins, it will be the cities that push him over. Detroit has a very large black population. What about if, at some point, somehow, domestic terrorists, right-wing terrorists, blow up or do something with a polling place that destroys all the votes? Not beyond the realm of possibility, right? What do you do then? That could
or just simply intimidate people. Just by
they're going to intimidate. I mean, that's always done,
because that Trump would go that far to say, look, Bannon says, okay, you've got to go to these polling stations.
They've already got that. I mean, that's a given. The question is how much.
Then we have to be ready. We have to be ready.
Well, let me ask you something.
And we're not. Maybe we are. I don't know.
No.
I'm assuming that we are.
Before getting ready, now it's interesting. Getting ready before an election meant simply having attorneys ready to handle legal questions.
Right. That.
But when you have a group of people with the allowed now bumper stock, out there with guns. Now, and it's one thing to say, "Oh, I'm brave. I'm going to go vote." Well, suddenly you see 18 people out there with guns. And you're black and they're white, or you're Hispanic and they're white, or you're a female and they're male, or anything like that.
I want to ask you, where is Kirk's phaser when you need one? You could take care of the whole thing,
No.
I'm just joking there, but you have to have ultimate power over these people.
Well, what they're doing, okay? I'm sure this isn't a...
Do you think that Biden should bring out the National Guard during the election?
Well,
I guess it would be the governors, but
yeah, and that's the problem. Some of what's good is also what's bad. It's great that we have committee, that doesn't allow military force to be used on United States land. However, it's then it's up to the local states, and as you pointed out, the Republican governors
they won't do it, or if they do it, they'll do it on.
And they won't call out the guard. And
I certainly care January 6th.
When you have people that really believe January 6th, they really believe that. They really think there are people who actually believe they were one of two things, either tourists. That's a very small chunk, okay? But there's a very large chunk of Americans that think what they did, they are the true patriots.
Which is hard to believe, because after about 8 seconds, I knew exactly what was going on.
But you didn't believe the election had been stolen. You didn't believe all the
I knew exactly what was going on. I got angry very quickly. And I also knew he's not going to call anybody.
and all of
Because
that
they
is
wouldn't have
true.
been there in the first place if he had done his job. He
But
wasn't going to do it.
but look at all the people that you know, or all the people that you know of who don't see it that way. Not only didn't they see it quickly, they don't see it today.
Yeah, and that's not a simple understanding that okay, well, you have your opinion and I have my opinion. Well, and then somehow we got to respect each other. No, this is something that we're playing with bullshit here. This is something that this is two
Mhm.
plus two equals four versus two plus two equals 17, and I don't
No,
like
you're
this.
well. You should. The question becomes um, a lot. Well, we were talking earlier about dystopian literature.
Mhm.
Do you realize that nobody really made out well there on our side? Certainly,
No, they didn't.
Winston and Julia didn't, right? Certainly, the women in *Handmaid's Tale* didn't.
No,
Firemen in *Fahrenheit
we were
451*.
rooting for them, but it didn't seem to
Well,
happen.
that's of course. Now, um,
And maybe
where?
because the authors purposely do that because they want you to understand the importance of it. Because if you
Oh,
have the win, you say, well, somebody's going to take care of
well,
it for me.
and that's that exactly.
Mhm.
And this time, Brian, I think you said something that needs to be repeated 1,000,000,000 times until we all. Uh, no one, Brian, is really going to help us other than us. That's
Right.
all. Now, what are we willing to do? And I don't know. Would we take up? I mean, and we is a big we. It's not you and I. We're talking about a
Right.
big collective we of people who don't think Donald Trump should be president and don't really see a way he can win fairly.
Well, then I'd
Uh,
say, at the very least, we, the people, should decide. Okay, then if you're going to play this game, we're not going to work, or we're going to work slow downs. We're going to do everything to ruin your economy. Since, by the way, since supposedly what is it, 79% of the GDP or GNP, what do you call it,
right.
is produced by the blue states. And no, I know there are Republicans within the blue states, but there has to be a push. This is the determinism. There will be no change unless you do something. You have to kick the chair under these people and do something,
And
because
then
it won't happen.
the other thing is, while Trump is, and you said it, I've said it, we've all said, there's not another Trump out there per se. Donald Trump is one of a kind because of The Apprentice, because of what he has. But there are Trump wannabes. Do you really think America would be in that much
Well,
better shape?
I still
With
say that, and maybe this is somewhat of a good thing, that there's no doubt that there are many Republicans like Lindsey Graham. They are intimidated by Trump, even
True.
McConnell. So if their psychology is that they can be intimidated, then I think that the president of the United States has to take account to that and say, okay, maybe this is the only way that we're going to, how you deal with that. I'm not saying, okay, look, we're going to take out the anthrax and, we're going to make sure that
Right.
you can't even pull that trigger. We're going to do it. Okay. I don't know that it has to be like that, but you at least have to have the fear in there that you might do something like that
But you know what? I
without being
think
crazy.
this is just my opinion. And please, anyone out there who disagrees, I love when people disagree with me because it makes me rethink or, think again about my opinion. For the most part, in 2024, the more violent people are on the right than on the left. That hasn't always been
Absolutely.
true. That hasn't always
That's
been true.
right. Well, it certainly is true now.
Yeah, because if
He's
you
given them
look,
license.
I mean, you had the Black Panthers, in the late '60s, early '70s. You had the Weathermen. Uh, yeah, Ichabod. The other thing, and I continue to say this, is please don't believe the polls for two reasons. One is that many of them are skewered by design. And a poll is only as good as the questions you ask, right? And you can lead people, to certain answers. But the second thing is, if this was ever true, it's true today. A 24-hour period, Brian, can change the complete course of this election. Now, that's always been true, right? But now even more. Let's just start with the fact that one candidate is 78 and demonstrating a lot of mental breakdown, and Joe Biden is 81, and an 81-year-old or a 78-year-old, Donald Trump's not 78, their life expectancy is not that of someone who was, if they were running at 41 and 38, right? I mean, so there's part of that. You've got the fact that we all know, I have no idea how Trump is still alive with what he eats and how he eats and all of that. But so my point is, don't get discouraged or encouraged by the polls. Gary, Gary and I've had this conversation a few times. Gary believes that. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just not as sure that as Gary. I wish I were, but I'm not. But again, I would agree. Like she said, Gary says, don't believe the polls. So don't worry about that. But try to figure out, and hopefully between now and maybe the election, we can start looking at some things we can do. One thing you can do, every American can do, is they can volunteer to go work at a polling place on election day.
And they're afraid to do that in many cases, after what we saw.
Well, they'll have a statistic when they're done. It'll definitely be alarming. How many election workers who worked the 2020 election will not work the 2024?
Well, so, it's at least, at the very least, it's a consideration, Dave. And that's something one must think about because you don't know what will happen these days.
Something that I'm trying to figure out and I can't get. And
especially the Kyle Rittenhouse in the world, and then the judges.
Well, what I'm really, when I say struggling, I mean I can't come up with an answer for it. What can I do to help convince people who aren't going to vote to vote? Now, of course, somebody said, "Well, you don't want that to happen. They could vote for Trump." I don't think so. They could vote for Robert Kennedy. They could vote for Jill Stein. They could vote for whomever. But I don't think Trump would get any. I mean, I think Trump has his votes, right? They're there. Whatever they are, they're there already. Unless Joe Biden slaps Jason Kelsey, in the face or something. But I don't know, and I don't know how you reach them. As I said, because.
Well, maybe this will have to be stars like
Taylor Swift. Yeah. And hopefully, but again, I know this sounds weird, stand up, but that when you're, I mean, she's big enough, she could lose half her fan bases. So
yeah, but the Republicans aren't going to do it with Scott Baio and, Wayne Newton. I mean,
no. And we saw this weekend, there was a big fundraiser with headlined by George Clooney and, Julia Roberts. So the star power is there, but I think what I hope young people, like somebody I admire a lot is David Hogue, who was involved in the shooting in Broward County and has devoted his life to political activism and trying to get young people to vote. That's the key. How do you get, I hope that gay organizations, will work on their people to say, look, this is life-threatening to you. Donald Trump is life-threatening to you. And he is.
And yet there are many gays, and we know a couple of people who.
I understand that. I'm talking about the people who aren't committed yet. You know what I mean? Just say, look, now, interesting enough, and I haven't followed through on this, so anybody out there, please feel free to do so. But I just saw a report that Trump met last week somewhere with a lot of Silicon Valley billionaires. And the report coming out was, man, he's absolutely, there's something wrong with him. Now, does that mean they won't support him? Not necessarily. But, or will they come out and say, what they saw? And will people believe it? I don't know. But I also think, and again, you're right. Probably if you had the room and one was pessimism, but realistic pessimism and realistic optimism, you and I might go in separate rooms. We might. But it's hard to be, optimistic given what we're facing. And so secondly, I think in addition, first things first, everybody needs to think about a way that they can stop Donald Trump from winning. But at the same time, you need to kind of have a plan B in case he does win. What do you do then? Now, some people say, no, that's not the, do it. Okay. But I do think, if on November 9th, or or January 22nd, or whenever,
Hmm.
there's a possibility that Donald Trump will be the president, and each of us will have to make decisions. It's easy to say, and I'm sure you have friends and people doing, "Oh, I'm going to leave the country." It's not that easy.
It's
Okay.
not easy.
First of all, the country, there's a lot of things to do. But anyway, on that cheerful note, I would say thank you to everyone who watched or listened. We really appreciate, obviously, doing it. Um, Secondly, the next few coming weeks, I'm going to stress two things. Uh, Asking all of you, and I'll do it also on our Facebook page, to ask more people to join, because I think, again, the idea is the more we have, it's not about
Right.
power, even the more somebody might share an idea, right?
Right.
Uh, and obviously we have our core base of listeners, and obviously we have our core base of uh, uh, posters on our Facebook page. But I'll send out a few times to just ask again. Please send out that list, because the difference is, ladies and gentlemen, Brian and I made a decision that from now to the election, we're going to let anybody on our page. We were right in not doing it leading up to this, but right now we don't want the fact of maybe somebody with a really great idea just because they didn't simply, follow the directions then. And rest assured that if we find anybody who's
Yeah, they'll be
trolling
out. You start trying to sell shit, or if you are a troll,
yeah,
you're gone.
yeah, and
And
what's
we still do
interesting,
that.
Brian,
Luckily,
yeah.
we've been pretty good of late, but we haven't.
Well,
had
no,
too
what I'm
much
saying
of
is this opening it up, it has it. Now, maybe, you know, I'm a little surprised about not the trolls so much, but somebody joining and then, pushing their Pepto Bismol thing or whatever.
that. Right.
But it's not that way.
Don't give me
And
your
then,
GoFundMe shit. I don't need that
yeah,
shit.
yeah,
You want to fund something? Fund it yourself.
right. And that's, it's something, again. And then the other thing I'm going to ask is, we do this show, you and I, and, we have things to fill and we can talk. But I really want to make sure that we're addressing what people want to know and want to hear. So I'm going to be asking more for people to, send questions in
Right.
for us. Is there something, like tonight? It wasn't a lot of questions, and that's not a bad thing. The show
Right.
really is about communicating with each other,
Right.
and sometimes to us. Like, and a guy asked me if I saw Walter Mosley, and that's good. But that can also be done at another time. Certainly you can reach us through Facebook Message. You can reach us through Divided We
We
Stand.
want this to be interactive, and not
Yeah.
because we're trying to make money. We're not. There's zero money. We're losing money on this. Okay. We both pay for eCam. We lose
Right.
$200 a year, whatever it is. That's not the exact amount. I don't know. But the point is, we invest our time in here, and that is a cost.
Right.
So,
And-
we don't
and-
have
and-
too many viewers.
And again, which kind of brings us full circle around. Again, won't name names, but 3 people who are members of Divided We Stand who I knew personally before, have actually sent me a private message saying thank you for the page, because they feel they can say and see and read things that they couldn't do on their personal pages,
Right.
or with their friends, and that's part of what we're here for. It's one thing to say, "Oh, I'll stand up and do it." It's another, if you live in a community, Brian, like where you do. Here, I could walk tonight. I probably could walk a mile in either direction and wouldn't encounter a Republican, just because that's, it's Democrats.
Right.
That's
But
not
we
the-
know the reality of the way it is.
Yeah. So anyway, everyone have a good week. Don't fall victim to, as was suggested tonight, don't fall victim to despondency over the polls. Wait and see. We have some big dates coming up. We have the July 11th sentencing, but before that, we have the June 27th debate, if it comes off. And we'll talk more about that next week. But just one thing I want to say in preparation for the debate, I would suggest, if you can, try to watch the debate in a group. I don't know how many there are in your area here. Like Busboys and Poets is having, a debate showing. Democratic organizations are having it. But even if you just invite a couple friends over,
Mhm.
who make it a social event, and again, we probably won't understand it that night. So it's just nice to have a breakdown. And, we don't have to listen to Rachel Maddow or any of those people. They're important, but they still, they're not like your neighbors. So anyway, that's it for me tonight.
All right, Dave. It sounds good. And again, folks, just remember that I think starting next week, we'll definitely start next week. We're going to start doing our 2 shows. We'll have one recorded, and then we'll have our Sunday evening show.
Now-
So stay tuned.
Now, yeah, and the other thing is, Brian, could you give a pledge tonight that you will not go whacking your thing in the weed? What was that again?
It's called weed whacking. Physical work that you haven't done since whenever. But you're talking to a guy here who let Judy cut the lawn while he's on the Chaise Lounge drinking lemonade.
Well, I mean, we believed in a division of labor back then.
There's no such thing as lawnmower, okay? And then what was funny about Dave is, after Judy cut the lawn, he then would lay on his side and look to see if the blades were equal, and if they weren't, she was in trouble. So, no, don't worry, Dave. They can't hear me, so don't worry.
All right. Like I said, don't whack your weeds no more.
Okay.
See you next time, Brian.
All right.
See you next time, everybody.
See you, Dave.